Now let's get into curves. Curves is another way for you to add contrast and also to adjust the overall exposure of your image. In the curve menu, you have presets that pop up on the bottom. So if we scroll through these, you can see that these do different things like adding more contrast, making more of a faded look, or they have some different presets. If I click this presets button, we can actually get rid of this preset menu so we can see the curve itself. So this is the tone curve. If you're familiar with Lightroom or Photoshop, you've probably played around with this before. But basically, you have your histogram. It's a little bit hard to see. If I zoom in on my image, you can see the histogram in the bottom of this sort of grid. In the left, you have your darks. On the right, so you have your highlights. And then you have this line. This preset has created more contrast by putting 2 points. You see this one that I'm moving right here. Dragging down the darks on the left will make those darker. And then on the top right, I'm bringing up the highlights, making those brighter. This S-shaped curve is what creates that contrast. So let's zoom out again. So if I do the opposite and I can manually adjust this and bring everything down, it's becoming darker. Bringing everything up, everything becomes brighter. You also have your black point and your white point. So these are the points in the top right corner and the bottom left corner. So if I take that bottom left corner and I drag up, what's happening is the blacks are actually becoming more gray. See how I do that? If I drag this to the right, what's happening is more is actually becoming black. So even those grays in the image might become pure black. In the top right, if I take that white point in the top corner, dragging down, the whites are becoming more gray. Those clouds are becoming not pure white anymore, but actual gray. Dragging to the left, more things become pure white. You can see in those clouds, everything becomes pure white up there. So that's how the curve works. You can play around with it just to see how things look like to you. But typically, if you want to add contrast, this is how you do it with a little bit of S-curve. But using these presets is a great way to get started. You also have channels. So right now we're editing the RGB channel, which is all of the colors in this image. You also have specific colors like red, blue, and green. So if I have the red channel open just by tapping red, and then I drag up or down, I'm adding red to this image, or I'm decreasing red. So if I want to get rid of the red in the darks, for example, I can put the point right there and then drag up, basically up here in the top right. That got rid of some of the reds and the darks. So you can play around with colors there, and you also have luminance. So luminance is sort of your overall exposure as well. It's just another way to adjust your exposure. Here you can also create more contrast with somewhat of an S-curve. So I'm going to get rid of all of those edits by clicking the X button, but that is the curve option, which allows you to fine-tune your exposure specifically for adding or decreasing contrast.